We all know somebody who probably doesn't vote or never voted. We have comparatively a quite high number of people who don't vote for a democracy. Well, guess what? It's time to have conversations with those people and get them to vote.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Well, I'm not sure if you watched that travesty in China last week, but I'm sure you saw what the Supreme Court did to the Voting Rights Act and what the former Confederate states are doing as a result. Data centers are going up around the country against the will of the people. We're spending money hand over fist on Trump's vanity projects at home and even more money abroad on an unwanted war. Our president is dropping memes, presenting himself as Jesus, building a 22-foot gold statue to himself, and just letting his friends and family rob us blind while the Supreme Court allows him to get away with it all. With all this going on, where does America sit as a democracy? Can we even call ourselves a democracy anymore with this kind of leader at the helm? To help us understand the moment we're in, we're going to be talking to Ruth Ben Ghiat, author of Strongman, From Mussolini to the Present, a literal expert on the rise of heads of state who damage and destroy democracy and promise law and order only to legitimize lawless behavior by themselves and their inner circle. A professor of history and Italian studies at NYU, Ruth is also an advisor at Protect Democracy and the recipient of the Guggenheim and other fellowships. The author of the Lucid newsletter on Substack about abuses of power and how to counter them, and a regular columnist and writer for mainstream media as an expert on authoritarianism and its threat to democracies around the world. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, professor, author, and expert on authoritarianism, Ruth Ben Ghiat. Welcome back, Ruth.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be speaking with you again.
Oh, thanks for coming back. Honestly, I hear people saying things these days and I'm like, I should check that with Ruth. I should check that with Ruth. Like I heard people saying recently that US is now considered like a hybrid democracy like Turkey, that according to leading political scientists, our democracy actually ended after Trump 2.0 began. And whether or not our country spirals into authoritarianism is very dependent on which party wins in November. How do you see that?
We have moved. It's always a continuum between
Right.
democracy and like North Korea. Or Eritrea, a dictatorship that has no internet. Those are extremes. But we definitely are in between. We still are a democracy. We have a major opposition party. You and I are able to speak in public, but our institutions have been grievously harmed. The purpose of autocratic rule is totally different than democratic governance. People like Trump are in office to make money off of public office and also to consolidate so much power and put loyalists around them and all that. So the processes are going on. So we're definitely traveling toward authoritarianism.
Yeah. I think the thing is that if we have 2 more years of this behavior completely unchecked, I don't think we're coming back from it. I mean, I think you were just talking about how we still have a opposition party. And I think my biggest concern would be, will the opposition party, in this case, the Democrats, rise to the occasion? Because as far as I'm concerned, leadership has yet to show they're up to the challenge of taking this threat seriously. In many ways, it feels like they've made it a little too easy for him. They keep trying to return to the way it was or act like we can get back to some sort of normal where we can reach across the aisle, when it is quite clear that the Trump administration and the people around him have no intention of ever going back. They have a plan of where we're going, and that's where they're taking us. And I think I would like to see more aggressive opposition from the leadership on the other side.
Yeah, if we look comparatively, one of the things that's actually a liability is that we are a bipartisan republic and we don't have a lot of parties. Because when you have a lot of different parties, like most other countries, there's more flexibility and new leaders can emerge because the parties are smaller, or you can found a new party like Bukele, who has his gulag in El Salvador. He founded his own party recently, and he called it the New Party. So the Democrats have this like institution, this giant party, and it's made for a kind of fossilization at the top, so that there are incredible like individual politicians who exactly get what's going on. But it's very hard for them to have true leadership of the party because it's so giant and it's so set in its ways.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Because I think people are often like, they paint the Democrats with one equal brush, and that's not the case. There are definitely Democratic leaders, people who are electeds right now who are truly fighting back, who truly get the moment. I just feel like the people in leadership, I think in many ways this comes back to money in politics, that like
Yeah.
you want to keep pleasing your donors, you want to make sure you're getting the money. And so they're not as willing to be as bold as perhaps some of the other people in leadership could be. I read recently that what this administration is doing to our institutions, to our symbols, to our norms is being done very purposely to demoralize us, to change the way we look at the country. They're sort of destroying things on purpose. And they're making us feel like, look, it's too broken to fix. Like you're just going to have to get with the program. And I feel like that's everything from the East Wing to the Reflecting Pool to the Kennedy Center, but also institutions that we take for granted, that we thought belonged to us, that we thought were trustworthy, like the Department of Justice or the State Department or the IRS or the FBI or even the military, right? And anyone who might have fought back against this leadership has quite clearly been purged or replaced or is silenced. And in many ways, that was always the plan. It was part of Project 2025 to replace career civil servants with ideological loyalists. And the ability for Trump and his people to do that was signed on day one of his term.
Yes, I agree with all of that analysis. And in doing all of this, autocrats want you to feel helpless and hopeless. And for example, with elections, nowadays it can be confusing for people because, old school, like one party states, there's no right to vote. Nowadays, they keep the right to vote. And they have like a simulation of democracy. Orban, who thankfully is gone now from Hungary, he called his system illiberal democracy. But there was nothing democratic about Orban's Hungary because you would vote and then your vote wouldn't matter because he had gamed the system.
Right.
It's designed to encourage fatalism in people where they say, well, I'm not going to vote because it's not going to matter. And Trump started in 2015, because I was covering him for CNN from 2015 on. He started by undermining confidence in elections. It's one of the first things he did. And then undermining confidence in truth, saying, well, we don't really know what's going on. Don't trust your own eyes and ears. And we've had 10 years of this BS from him that has affected people. And the purpose of undermining trust in all institutions' legitimacy is to have trust and belief reside only in the leader and his proxies. So it's the strongman authoritarian thing that I've studied for years. And that's why they have personality cults. Now we have the golden statue of Trump. We have, his ballroom, which is just like an excuse for the bunker underneath. So we feel safe and everything has to have his face on it, our passports. And all of this is to make people feel tiny and small and helpless because there's nothing they can do. And history proves that wrong because people again and again, I have a new book project that I just signing a contract called Resisting Autocracy. And it's about how people in even more dire circumstances than ours have mobilized and fought back and often regained their freedom.
That's great. I mean, honestly, you used Hungary as an example right there at the beginning. I mean, I think people need to remember that in Hungary, Orban how long was he in power? 12 years, 16 years?
16 years.
Yeah. Okay. So, and in that time, he took over the media. He changed the constitution. He took over the courts. He really took full control of that country. So in many ways, people are like, well, what's the point? Like, I can't. And then everything changed in this last election because they had such a vast turnout. Over 80% of people showed up, and you can only game the system so much if the people come out en masse like that. And I think we have to remember that actually is something America could be looking to right now.
Yeah, and I want to say a word about how Magyar did it. He knew the system very well. He used to be in Orban's party. And this is important. There are two important lessons. One is that you can get around media capture, which is when you have the autocrat who's bought off, has all these allies who own all the media outlets, and we're moving toward that, right, in our country. And so the last two elections in Hungary before this one, the opposition candidates, their messages weren't even heard outside of the big cities because it's as though you just had Fox News And they didn't even put the opposition candidate's face on television. They had no airtime. And so what did Magyar do? He decided 2 years before the election to do what he called the Million Step March. And he went on this crazy tour all over Hungary to small towns. And he targeted parishes, and he targeted like rural little villages, and he went all over the place. Like, he's also in his 40s, so he has lots of energy, and he could do this. And this paid off. So basically, he went to the voters in person, and other freedom fighters and people who have turned people from autocrats like Mamdani. He walked the length of Manhattan, so people saw him in person, and he got all these Trump voters to do it. And in Turkey, there was a guy who did the same thing. He walked around Istanbul. So you put yourself in person to get beyond all the propaganda and demonization that the autocrat says about you. So it worked. It actually worked. And that's an example how things can seem set in stone, because that's how the autocrat wants you to feel. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. And that's what happened in Hungary. And there's no reason that can't happen here.
But I think my biggest problem is that America is arguably too big. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
I can walk across Hungary. I can walk across Turkey. You know, when people say, well, why don't if Americans hate Trump so much, why don't they all come out en masse? And I'm like, we do. But our country is so big. If you put 8 million people that were at the last No Kings rally in one place, if you put us all in DC, it would be extraordinary to look at. But our country is so large that it's very hard for us to look like we're making a huge difference. I kind of feel like we need to do another Hands Across America, you know, like we should all just get out and do a Hands Across America. And people be like, whoa, that's a lot of people that are all part of this. I mean, I know that there's lots of people in my life who are trying to make themselves feel better. And they say, yeah, you know, like everything that's going on right now is really bad, but it's going to come back around. It always does. And to me, this feels like a different moment. Does it feel different to you? Like this is not politics as usual? Like I find it hard when I hear people talk like that.
Yeah, there's two things. One is the not good part, and then there's a more positive part. It is not politics as usual. We have an unprecedented situation because we've never had an openly authoritarian leader in office who only praises other authoritarians and war criminals and allies with autocrats. This is who he is. He despises democracy. He has always been a racist, Trump. We know this. This goes way back. And what he has done with the help of Project 2025 and the GOP. So the GOP is now a totally authoritarian party. It has been converted. It has no identity beyond Trump. It is his handmaiden, right? And that has never been the case before to this extent, that its will is subjected to the leader. And this goes back in 2020 already. The GOP for the election decided to have no platform beyond supporting Trump. So they were already holiday. And then January 6th, where Trump incited a violent mob to go after Republicans as well as Democrats, that broke them psychologically. They're broken. And then they were so scared they became his. So that has never happened. We never had a January 6th before. And then the institutions have been hollowed out. That's the word we use in history and political science. When institutions lose you can't be a civil servant who's objective anymore. Civil servants are supposed to serve, they take an oath of service, and it's not to the leader. It's to the Constitution. It's to the government. It's to their own institutions, regardless of who's in power. That's all changed. So you have these mass purges. Every autocrat does this, and you put in these sycophants and loyalists. And so you mentioned the Department of Justice, so that the institution becomes the personal servant of the leader. So the Department of Justice, the function now is to go after Trump's enemies and to solve his legal and financial problems and stop any investigations against his corruption. So serving him personally so that he can, the two goals, I said before, he can make money without, any pesky interventions or investigations, and he can continue to consolidate power and disregard Congress and do illegal things that the Department of Justice will no longer find illegal.
like you're saying, agencies that were kind of previously led by people with decades of knowledge who did their job without the interference of politics. Those ones have been gutted. And we called them the deep state, but really they were just career bureaucrats that were like, this is the job that I do. And, the president changes, but my job doesn't change. Those people are gone. It's just loyalists now. This episode is brought to you by iQBar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. iQBar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar, brain and body fuel you need to win your day. Our days are long. They're stressful. They're packed with so many things that often, if you're like me, you forget to eat, or you don't eat enough healthy food, or you don't drink enough water. That's why I'm happy that my boys carry iQBar products in their bag. I use the IQ Mix packages in my water because it hydrates with electrolytes and improves mood and boosts clarity. My boys, who are very careful about what they eat, have the IQ bars, which are plant-based protein bars with tons of fiber and no added sugar. All IQ bar products are clean label certified, entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. They are packed with clean, delicious ingredients to keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium and lion's mane. There's a reason over 20,000 people have given their company 5-star reviews. If you want to give IQ bar products a try, why not order the sampler pack? It has all the IQ bar products and flavors. That's 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text PG to 64,000. Text PG to 64,000. That's PG to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. So, I am not a particularly fussy dresser, but I'm finding it harder and harder to shop lately because it just feels excessive. In a world where capitalism is constantly encouraging us to spend more and get more and buy more, I'm really trying to be more intentional about what I am wearing. I have always leaned towards clothes that are good quality, simple in their design, and specific in their craftsmanship. But I don't want to have to spend thousands of dollars just to look pulled together. That's why I like Quince. Quince uses premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, ultra-soft denim, and 100% Himalayan cashmere. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they work directly with ethical factories to cut out the middleman so you end up paying for the quality of the clothes and craftsmanship and not the brand markup. I literally live in linen shirts and cashmere sweaters from Quince, but I have just bought a strapless linen maxi dress, a new clutch, and a new watch band for summer. Honestly, Quince has everything from clothes to lab-grown diamonds, and all without the markup. It's actually kind of fun to shop again. So if you're thinking of refreshing your spring wardrobe, maybe do it with Quince. Head to quince.com/politicsgirl for free shipping on your order and 365 days of returns. And for my Canadian friends, it's also available in Canada now too. That's QUINCE.com/politicsgirl for free shipping and 365 days of returns. Quince.com/politicsgirl. Those people are gone. It's just loyalists now.
To add another example, because we're so much in foreign policy now because we're at war, the State Department, the idea of diplomacy has totally changed. Diplomacy is something where you sit down, you use your words. We're both parents, right? You use your words, and you do not use violence. You do not negotiate via bombs, which is what Hegseth said recently. So autocrats don't want diplomacy. They just want to force to prevail. And so that's one thing that happens. Diplomacy goes out the window with autocrats, and that's going on with trigger-happy Hegseth there. The other is that you have the privatization of foreign policy, where instead of career diplomats, you have, maybe his son-in-law. I have a Substack called Lucid, and I wrote an article like a few years ago now about sons-in-law who are always there at the negotiating table. They're always there in government because they do the dirty deals. So who do we have at the tables for Ukraine, for Iran? We have Jared Kushner. And we have the other category that appears, the cronies, the friends from the old days. And Putin has his friends from the old days from St. Petersburg. And so lo and behold, I'm like checking the box. Steve Witkoff appears, who Trump has known for 40 years. He's a real estate executive. He has no world policy, foreign affairs experience, and yet he's entrusted, along with Kushner, who is funded by the Saudis. Like, the conflicts of interest, you can't even count how many there are, because autocrats don't recognize conflicts of interest. So that's another example for your viewers. The State Department has become also the personal property of Trump and his family.
Yeah. I mean, you've said that the oligarchs in general in this kind of administration, oligarchs usually operate at least outside of the government. But in the Trump administration, the ultra wealthy, the family members, they have all moved inside, which is helping speed up the dismantling of our civil service, of our institutions. And then you got people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Trump's own children, getting government contracts, being the negotiators, having these big important jobs. Which is interesting because they're kind of working right now to destroy the very power they're currently wielding, right? They're like dismantling the system from within.
Yeah, this is something I was on this immediately and wrote a bunch of newsletter articles in January, February, March 2025, because I was horrified at what was going on that was totally changing the regular autocrat oligarch relationship. As you said, the point of the oligarch in India with Modi, or certainly Putin, they're people who are outside the government. And so they buy up banks, or they buy up, news agencies and media outlets, and then they become allies. And that's their purpose. What did Trump do? He brought the world's richest man, the ultimate oligarch. He brought him inside government. He gave him the keys to government. They created Doge as a kind of cover for the infiltration of the oligarch into the nerve center of a superpower. They used coup tactics in these first months of the administration. They locked out government elected officials from buildings. They locked out career bureaucrats from their own computer systems. And he had these young guys who came in, his digital army, but they were also in person, who slept there 24/7 and occupied the Department of the Treasury. And they got the payment systems and financial data and personnel data of a superpower. And they did this in the first months. And the purpose was for Musk, he wants to re-engineer government so that it can prevent him from being investigated. That's why he destroyed US aid. They had several investigations going against his companies. So it's another, government becomes a way to solve, you occupy government, and it's a way that you solve your financial and legal problems. And who cares if you disrupt Social Security or you steal data, which is what happened. It was like a huge data heist. And so I feel that we haven't digested this yet, how Musk was like a co-president at the beginning of the term. And Time magazine actually had a cover of Musk sitting behind the presidential desk in the Oval Office. And that was accurate. And he's still involved. He was in the delegation to China. He was involved in fact, Trump said, Elon knows what's going on, when they were talking. There was a press conference about the US selling the Saudis weapons. And he said, Elon handles that. So Elon is not a secretary of state or anything, but he is actually in the government doing policy to benefit his own businesses. So this is unheard of.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's the same with Thiel. It's the same with a lot of these people. But I think also, having read your books, I feel like strongmen pick people they can corrupt, right? Yeah. You've said, go down the list of Trump's inner circle and really think about it. Like, he needs people around him who are flawed because he can corrupt them. If you surround yourself with compromised people, and then this is to quote you directly, you can offer them cover, legitimacy, maybe even an office or a title, the illusion of authority. And then you make them believe that they will escape justice if they just stay loyal to you, right? And that is sort of exactly who Trump has surrounded himself with. And I feel like, the Epstein stuff sort of fits into that as well.
It does. And so the general principle is you don't really want super competent people. There are exceptions. Like Stephen Miller is extremely competent at repression. And he's in my book, which was written during the first Trump administration. But if you take like Tulsi Gabbard, who was made director of national intelligence, she had no intelligence connections or background. And that's why she was put there, because then Trump could control her. And so autocrats get very paranoid about people who have too much of their own autonomous power. You see, Xi Jinping has fired like half of the military establishment, including like seasoned generals, because they had too much in his mind, too much expertise and too many
so
admirers.
We, haven't we? We've done the same thing with our military.
Yes, the same thing across the board. This has happened, and so you have these people who are hired for their loyalty, and also it's important that this administration has dozens of people in high office who had on-air roles at Fox, and so they are able to lie and look good while they do it. And so Pete Hegseth, what did he do? As soon as he came in as Secretary of Defense, he created a makeup studio in the Pentagon because he was a weekend host at Fox, and he's able to repeat the talking points regardless of their falsity and look convincing. They're good actors. And that's a big part of the success of their propaganda, is that they've been able to act out these lies convincingly. I think that's fading now because of the way the war has gone against Iran. But that has been, until now, part of the success.
Yeah, I think that's fading now because of the way the war has gone. Yeah, we're doing not so great over there, which is a little embarrassing. I mean, listen, who do you think is actually pulling the strings in this administration? Is it Peter Thiel? Is it the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society? Is it billionaire tech guys in general? Israel, Putin, Trump's own greed? I mean, I know that we got here as a combination of many of those things, but who's pulling the strings at this point? Because it's not Trump, right? He's a walking id. We know what he's doing there. We know that he wants to make money. We know that he wants to feel important. We know that he wants to make sure he never ends up in jail. But whose big picture do you think we're living through? Because it's clearly not the vision of Trump.
So two things. One is, I wouldn't discount Trump. Actually, he has a pretty clear plan. And when he messages, of course, he goes off and rambles and doesn't make sense half the time. But he always comes back to the points that he wants to make, and he's been remarkably effective. And he does have a vision. Now, the vision, again, has nothing to do with what we usually consider governance. He's not interested in governing. He's interested in having policy to make deals to get money. And so it was obvious that he was going to be the way he was with China, because, at the end of the first term, he said, the Chinese paid me $5 million for services. And none of the journalists were like, well, what were the services? And we never found out what the services were. And we know, probably Chinese are investing through crypto. So again, don't discount Trump. But the fact you're asking who pulls the strings because it's not clear is a sign that we're not in a democratic environment anymore. Because in a democratic environment, there's transparency about decision making. There are career diplomats who make the decisions in foreign policy. When this stuff that we've been talking about comes in and, look, Steve Witkoff, who ever heard of him before in politics? Oh, look, Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, who has now his own clan that's getting rich. And so you have multiple spheres of decision making based on the goals of making as much money as possible from office. And so it's very common in autocracies for people to wonder who is actually pulling the strings. It's like a symptom that you ask that question of how degraded democracy has become, because the normal chains of command are no longer functioning because the institutions have been changed, right, to accommodate Trump. It's super interesting and obviously not good.
Not good, Ruth. But listen, if we have degraded our democracy this much, what do you say to the people who then might rightly say, we're not voting our way out of this? Can fascism itself even be outvoted? I mean, we know in Hungary it can, but it's usually defeated, over time and with violence. So, how do you see this playing out?
No, it doesn't have to be defeated with violence. In fact, in Chile, which is a major case study in my book, I'm going to write about it again. They had a military dictatorship, right? Thousands of people tortured, disappeared. And they had a mass nonviolent protest that grew. It took some years, but they had a referendum and they registered people to vote, things that we should be doing every day. They canvassed, because the voting rolls have been practically thrown away, of course, because he's a dictator. And they prevailed, and they got rid of Pinochet without violence, and they were able to reclaim their democracy. And there have been other examples of this. So you don't need, it's very important actually that resistance remain nonviolent, because what you want is eventually, we know that the elites are mostly cowardly. In our country, they've been being in advance since even before Trump got there. But at some point, you want them to realize that they're on the wrong side of history. Maybe they're not moved by moral arguments. They wouldn't be supporting Trump if they were. But maybe the economy is going to tank, and they finally realize it's not in their interest to support anymore. So if your resistance has been violent at all, they're never going to support you, ever. So it's called elite defection. You want these elites to defect and go over to the other side. And that only happens if the resistance is nonviolent.
Okay. That's a good thing to know. You've been talking a lot about how it's crucial we learn from history. And like it's things like you're talking about, that in Chile, they didn't do it, violently. But other autocrats and how they've treated elections, we should look at those countries and be prepared and respond appropriately. So like, how do you think Americans right now should be preparing for the upcoming election? Our darling Chips, the amazing, fabulous golden doodle, just turned 12. His birthday was last week. And while he is the best dog in the entire world, he is also an incredibly picky eater. And if you have a picky eater dog, you know it can be surprisingly stressful. It's like a song and dance every mealtime. You try different brands, you put toppings on it, you even sit next to them while they try to eat. And you tell yourself that they'll eat when they're hungry, right? But I swear our dogs know. They know the difference between real food and whatever most dog foods are made of, which is why we've been feeding Chips Sundays for Dogs for years. Sundays for Dogs starts with 80% all natural meats and then finishes with superfoods like kale, ginger, blueberries. They gently air dry instead of using high heat, so Sundays doesn't smell like dog food because it has no chemicals, no nutritional blends. It's just simple, complete nutrition. Sundays was founded by Dr. Tori Waxman, a veterinarian and dog parent who wanted quality food that didn't need to go in the fridge, the freezer, required no prep, and made no mess. You get the quality of a home-cooked meal with the serve and ease of kibble. It's what dog food should be. And with over 100,000 dogs eating Sundays, let the reviews speak for themselves, especially from owners of picky eaters who have never seen their dog so committed to a food. I can speak wholeheartedly from my picky eater dog that Chips actually really enjoys Sundays. I never feel like I'm letting him down when I put it in his bowl. So why not add Sundays to your routine or make the switch? Go to sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50 and get 50% off your first order. Or you can use the code PoliticsGirl50 at checkout. That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50, sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50, or use the code PoliticsGirl50 at checkout. Laundry sauce is changing the way we do laundry in 2026. I know you guys have heard me rave about laundry sauce before, and I understand that someone gushing about laundry detergent is absolutely ridiculous. But this stuff isn't just laundry detergent. It is a full upgrade for your entire laundry routine that effortlessly helps you smell amazing. The pre-measured pods just make life easier. No giant clunky bottles with the measuring cap that look gross or take up too much space. Just premium collection of high-performance detergent pods and other laundry essentials infused with sophisticated fragrances crafted by the world's top perfumers. I am not overselling it to say that laundry sauce will change the way you do laundry. It's a full upgrade. And you don't have to take my word for it because laundry sauce offers a full money-back guarantee. So if you don't get better smelling, cleaner laundry, you'll get a full refund, no questions asked. Scent-wise, we currently go back and forth between Siberian pine and my favorite scent, Indonesian patchouli, but we're coming up on the summer, so I might switch to their new scent, Brazilian vanilla. I love that laundry sauce allows you to switch up your scent for the seasons, and I am someone that used to only like unscented things. So whichever scent you choose, if you subscribe to their signature package, Laundry Sauce will keep you stocked with all of their must-haves, bringing them straight to your door on your schedule, saving you an errand and making sure you never run out in the middle of washing again. You will get detergent pods, scent boosters, dryer sheets, all the things designed to infuse your laundry with high-end fragrance, fight stains, and elevate the experience. For a limited time, our listeners get 20% off their entire order when they use the code PoliticsGirl20 at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off at laundrysauce.com with the promo code PoliticsGirl20. After you check out, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Don't forget to drop our name. Trust me, your laundry has never smelled this good. How do you think Americans right now should be preparing for the upcoming election?
We all know somebody who probably doesn't vote or never voted. We have comparatively a quite high number of people who don't vote for a democracy. Well, guess what? It's time to have conversations with those people and get them to vote. It's time, if you want to do something, you don't want to be in the streets. Not everybody wants to be in the streets. You can help register people to vote. You can help people check if their vote is still valid. Basically, we have to overcompensate because, especially after the Supreme Court decision, we still can overcompensate if we have enough people who can vote, perhaps on behalf of those who can no longer vote. It's like a patriotic act. We have to message this in a way we can still prevail. One of my slogans is, you never give up on elections. And in fact, if you look around the world, Alexei Navalny, who Putin ended up killing, but he got into elections. He was an anti-corruption researcher. He decided to run for office after Putin did his big crackdown and came back to office in a fraudulent election in 2012. And that's when Navalny decides he's going to start running for office. So if you look around the world, there's a lot of other examples. It's when things can seem most dire that freedom fighters invest more in elections. They never give up on elections.
That's good to know, because I feel like if you look around right now, it seems like the administration is building and testing an infrastructure to steal the next election as we speak. I mean, they're not really even hiding it. The Supreme Court might even be helping them, right? So I think it's hard for people who are looking at that from the outside, who feel like they are powerless, to think that their vote still matters when you can see so many institutions working against them. And I think this idea that never, what's your quote? You never give up on elections.
You never give up on elections. Yeah. Because otherwise your vote is your voice. And if you don't vote out of what if Hungarians figured, he's been there for 16 years. What am I going to do? He's backed by Putin. Then we wouldn't have had the result we did. The same in Chile, the same in other places. And actually, elections have been really important in the last two midterms, 2018 and 2022. Brought incredible people to office, and those were fueled by the protest movements. The Women's March, they led thousands of women to run for office in 2018, and the same with Black Lives Matter protests. Thousands of people ran for office in 2022, and we have this new leadership class at the local and state level. They look like America. And that's we were on a trajectory to make our government reflect more the multiracial democracy we are. And I just published a piece in Lucid about the plan of Trumpism is to get rid of multiracial democracy and create a white Christian ethno-state. So if you silence yourself by not voting and you don't even try and you give up, the stakes are really high, not just for elections, but this is what they want to do, to have a white Christian ethno-state. And there's a reason that they're borrowing from Nazi messaging. And Trump is calling people vermin, which is what Mussolini and Hitler did. We can't give up in the face of this. We can't just silence ourselves. We have to try. And you look back and think about, what are you going to tell your kids if you haven't had kids yet, or your family if you're not having kids? What are you going to tell people at this decisive moment? I just decided not to vote and I just detached. Well, that's not ideal. Of course,
no.
Everybody gets exhausted. And I do a lot of yoga. I go for walks in nature if I'm out of the city. There are times I can't deal. I just detach for a little while. But I believe the reason I'm doing all this, and I just changed my whole career from being just a regular professor to doing all this, is I felt like I know the stakes because of my studies, and I wanted to be able to do everything I could to help people. And you can help in your own way. Just even working to help people vote is something.
Yeah. And it's the concept of rest, don't stop. And I think
Yeah,
that that's
exactly.
really essential, because I know that I was reading Ann Applebaum, who I know you've spoken to multiple times. And if you guys don't know her, she is one of the best historical journalists in the world, as far
Yeah.
as I'm considered. And she was recently saying, look, democracy is no longer at the center of the United States foreign policy or the United States identity under this leadership. The United States administration is no longer interested in leading a democratic coalition against Russia or anyone else. That Trump has begun to align U.S. foreign policies and values with the values and practices of the autocratic world. And the loyalties are really changing. So if you don't want that to happen, if you don't want the dictators of the world to carve up our planet for themselves, where Russia gets Europe and China gets Asia and the US gets the entire northern hemisphere, then this is the moment that you step up and you do something. And you can't just be like, well, this is really hard. You have to be like, well, this is a really big deal. And now what am I doing? What is my choice? And as you're saying, it's not always just getting out on the street. It might be just registering
Yeah.
people to vote and encouraging people who have never voted before to understand the stakes.
And also talking to people. Everyone I know, and me too, have somebody in their family who has fallen for all of the propaganda, and they have not been very reachable, shall we say. And I understand that, for example, if you're gay and you have homophobic relatives who just reject who you are completely, you might not want to be talking to those people. So there are times where the best thing for your mental health is to just keep the silence. But it's also something we can all do, because things are changing. People are waking up. Trump's corruption is so blatant. The mishandling of the war is so obvious. The economy is getting worse. There's going to be supply chain problems. Like, people are going to see the effects of malfeasance and bad governance for themselves. So this is the time to actually, if you tried to speak to somebody before and it went badly and you're like, I'm never doing that again. It's time to try again. During the pandemic, my mother, who lives in England, she got radicalized by watching Russia Today, because she had a lockdown in her village. And she discovered Russia Today, which is Russian propaganda with British hosts. And so she started talking about Putin, and I was like, she never talked about Putin. And I study this stuff. So I would send her articles that I'd done for CNN, and she'd be like, well, you're just fake news. And so I would call her, and then I was so frustrated I would hang up. And then I realized, wait, I study this stuff. You're not supposed to hang up. You're supposed to try and talk to them about other things and keep the relationship. And indeed, eventually, partly because Russia Today got banned in England, but she kind of came to her senses. She stopped talking about Putin. She didn't hate Biden quite as much. And I was kind of there to talk her through it. So even I, who has studied this stuff for years, was hanging up on her out of frustration. So I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to get. I have an aunt and uncle who are well down the MAGA train. And at this point, I don't know what to say to them. You know what I mean? But I do agree that what we're coming up on, whether it's going to be food shortages, whether it's these data centers, whether it's the war, whether it's the Epstein files not being released when they promised, there are people kind of waking up a bit and being like, hold on, this is nothing like I thought. I didn't ask for an arch. I don't want him on Mount Rushmore. These are not things I'm thinking of right now. I'd like to be able to afford gas, and I'd like to be able to afford healthcare, and I don't get any of that, but he gets X, Y, and Z. I think now is the time to kind of come in underneath and say, yeah, that does seem curious. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that? Instead of being like, I told you,
Exactly.
it's just, I think it's just better to come in it with curiosity and open-mindedness, because I think that the things that they are doing are really alarming people, as they should. And listen, before you go, I'd love to know what your thought is on this insane push for data centers, because they are not building these things that just take all of our water and heat up our land and ruin our farms to help us with our businesses so we can all use ChatGPT, right? This has got to be some sort of mass surveillance system that they're building. Do you think that that's true?
Yeah, I think that definitely, Palantir, Alex Karp, who keeps appearing in public seemingly drugged out of his mind, does not build confidence. But Palantir is already, like its software is already being used by US law enforcement for surveillance purposes. And all of these tech guys have the deepest disdain for democracy. They're openly autocratic. I think that they are worried right now because, for example, Elon Musk, he's always been posting about white supremacy and race, but the Washington Post did an investigation that he's gotten like extremely manic, and he has posted like 600 times in the last months. Like the pace of his posting has gone up. And then Alex Karp of Palantir chose to publish this manifesto, which wasn't written right now, but he decided to publish it. So they feel some kind of urgency to accelerate everything they're doing, because I think they feel that the tide is going to turn against them. But mass surveillance intertwined with policing, this is what is done in China. They have the most sophisticated system that intertwines authoritarian surveillance with policing in the world. And China sells its software to others. And so we have these tech billionaires, Peter Thiel, who has bankrolled and supported Vance. Vance is there as vice president, as the proxy of these techno-fascists, as I call them. And so the data centers are clearly part of this fascistic plan for mass control through control of information.
And I think we really need to push back against them every single time we can. I mean, I think about the authoritarian governments you've written about in the past and how the resistance met in secret, right? They met in secret to fight back. And now with our phones tracking us and our cameras everywhere and our doorbells and our Alexas all spying on us, and then this new presidential memorandum that basically redefines what a domestic terrorist is if you're not American enough or Christian enough, or, how do you build a resistance if that's the reality we're living in? And is that not the point of what they're doing?
Well, we're already building resistance. We're actually, look at what happened, what's happened in all the places that ICE has been brutalizing people. Look at what's been going on in Minneapolis. We're actually ahead of the curve. Before in our conversation, you talked about, we're not seeing, all of everybody coming to the Capitol. Well, today, resistance is often decentralized. All of the resistance that, like Iranian women in 2022, 2023, with cutting their hair and flooding the streets without their hijabs on, that was all over the place. So we have, especially in a giant country like the US, it's going to be decentralized. It's going to be embodied in person, in real life, and less digital. And that's what's been happening, is from the community up. And it's been very, very effective. So when I said before, we're ahead of the game, because it usually takes years to have like a strong, cohesive pro-democracy movement. And the degree of people, the number of people participating, first hands off, and then no kings, and other initiatives, and then all the in the cities. We have the states' rights things. So we do have the one party, like only one Democratic Party. So that we went over that. That's kind of a liability. But we also have a more decentralized governance structure than many other countries with states' rights. And in fact, Trump has been targeting the states and the major cities, and that's why you had these like ICE military occupations, and that's where the resistance has come. So we're actually ahead of the game in terms of numbers of people who in the last year have been participating in resistance activities. So I'm more optimistic. I could be easily very pessimistic, or I could say, I'm just leaving the country and I'm not going to stay here. It's just give up. But it's quite the opposite. And I really am heartened by everything that's been going on. And it's not easy. They're formidable adversaries. But grassroots resistance has always managed to build movements and make people feel that there's hope. And the most successful resistance, whether it's local or becomes national, is holding out a better future and a different future. We, like you said before, do you really want to be a white Christian ethno-state? Well, no.
Yeah.
We were the world's finest example of a multiracial democracy. We had the strongest economy in the world at the end of the Biden administration. And look at what has happened in just over a year. Everything is tanking. And so it's not hard to know what to support for your prosperity, for your kids, for the whole country.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's not hard to know which way to support. You just have to get yourself out of the propaganda thing that your poor mother was going through, every day, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Ruth. Can you please tell people how to follow your work moving forward so they can keep up on everything that you know and you are letting us in on?
Sure. I'm on Instagram and other socials at Ruth Ben Ghiat altogether. And then I publish most of my writing. I have a Substack newsletter, Lucid, Lucid, and that's where a lot of my thinking. And I have weekly Zooms where we talk about stuff live. And I do a lot of Substack lives under Lucid.
Yeah, you do so much work. You are prolific in the amount of work that you put out there. I'm so grateful for it. I mean, I just saw a thing today when I woke up this morning. It was like when people put balloons to spell things out, and it said, "We're not cooked. We're not doomed. We were made for this moment. So shake it off, check on your neighbors, and pick up your bricks." Like, let's get building.
I love that.
Let's build something better. And I thought that was really great. And I thought that's exactly where we need to be right now.
I love that.
Thanks for coming.
Sure. It's been a delight.
So that was Ruth Ben Ghiat reminding us that unless you want to live in a white Christian ethno-state, you need to be engaging now. That now is the best time to re-engage as this administration sets everything on fire and people start to feel the heat. That, according to Ruth, we are actually ahead of the curve in terms of our resistance. So we need to be talking to everyone, registering people to vote, pointing out the flaws in the system, and not giving up on elections. If anything, we have to overcompensate. Autocrats want us to feel helpless and hopeless, but we are not. It's an uphill battle, but not a lost cause. Our president hates democracy. He is here to make money and consolidate power. We have to be more inspiring and so persuasive that the elites, who are mostly cowards, realize that their lives will be better if they take our side and let Trump go. I want to thank Ruth for joining us today and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now get out there and fight for better. Until next week, PG out. Before you go, I just want to remind you that the American government is trying to silence any voices that don't toe the party line. But as Ruth said, we can get around the media capture. They want state-run propaganda, which is why we need to fund independent media. So if you respect what I'm trying to do here, if you learn something from my podcasts and rants, if you would like to get this podcast ad-free delivered directly to your inbox, along with my kitchen rants and TV appearances, then please consider becoming a member of PoliticsGirl Premium by going to PoliticsGirl.com and signing up. If you're already a premium member of this podcast, thank you for your support. And if you're not a member, please consider becoming a patron of my work. If you want real knowledge in a world of lies, it's essential to support those of us out here still trying to bring it to you. There is a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also at PoliticsGirl.com. And as always, please like and share these podcasts so we can grow our audience, because the more people who have access to this kind of information, the better. As always, thank you for your time and support. The Politics Girl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.